Imagine walking into the original headquarters building of the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia. As you step into the main lobby, your eyes are immediately drawn to the wall. Carved into the stark, cold marble is perhaps the most famous quote about human liberty in history. "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." You will find these exact same words etched into the stone of prestigious university libraries, stamped onto the seals of courthouses, and quoted by politicians of every ideological stripe. We have taken this ancient phrase and weaponized it to defend our modern values. We use it to demand political liberty. We use it to champion journalistic integrity. We use it to validate our personal autonomy, our absolute right to live our own truth, whatever that may be. But what if the man who originally spoke these words meant something entirely different? What if our modern, hyper-individualistic definition of freedom, the idea that freedom simply means the absence of any restrictions, the permission to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want, is actually the exact opposite of what was being taught? When Jesus of Nazareth stood up in the first century and uttered those iconic words, he was not giving a political speech. He was not endorsing democracy or free speech. He was saying something deeply shocking, something so profoundly offensive to his original audience that just a few verses later, they would literally pick up stones to crush his skull. To understand the secret of John chapter 8, verse 32, we have to strip away 2,000 years of Western political philosophy and step back into the dust, the heat, and the overwhelming tension of first-century Jerusalem. The stage is set during the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. This was not a quiet, contemplative religious gathering. It was a massive, vibrant, chaotic festival. The city's population would swell with hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. The air was thick with the smoke of sacrifices, the chanting of ancient psalms, and an electric undercurrent of political rebellion. You have to remember, Jerusalem was a city under the iron boot of military occupation. From the towering vantage point of the Antonia fortress, Roman soldiers looked down directly into the temple courtyards, watching the Jewish crowds, hands resting on the hilts of their swords, waiting for any sign of an uprising. It is right here in the shadow of imperial Rome, amidst a people desperate for a political messiah to violently overthrow their oppressors, that Jesus makes his declaration. He is standing in the temple courts, speaking to a crowd of Jewish listeners who are fiercely proud of their heritage. He looks at them and says, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." If you read the text closely, the reaction of the crowd is immediate, and it is visceral. They do not applaud. They do not nod in philosophical agreement. They are deeply, personally insulted. They fire back at him. "We are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves to anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Let that response sink in for a moment. We have never been slaves to anyone. It is, historically speaking, one of the most absurd statements ever recorded. It is a staggering display of collective amnesia. This is a people whose entire national identity, whose foundational narrative was born out of 400 years of brutal slavery in the brickyards of Egypt. After that, they were conquered by the Assyrians. Then their holy city was burned to the ground, and they were dragged away in chains to become captives in Babylon. After the Babylonians came the Persians. After the Persians came the Greeks under Antiochus Epiphanes, who slaughtered them and defiled their temple. And at the exact moment they are looking Jesus in the eye and proudly declaring, "We have never been slaves." They are paying crushing taxes to Caesar. Their courts are overseen by Roman governors, and Roman legionaries are patrolling the streets outside. Yet, human pride has a fascinating, blinding power. They had convinced themselves that because they possessed the bloodline of Abraham, because they had the Torah, they were inherently free, regardless of their actual circumstances. And this brings us to the core question, the inciting incident of this entire theological drama. Why offer freedom to a people who genuinely, desperately believe they are already free? What invisible prison were they living inside without even knowing it? To answer this, we have to look past the English translation and examine the profound cultural and linguistic context of the era. The Gospel of John was written in Greek, and the words chosen here carry an immense philosophical weight. When Jesus speaks of truth, the word recorded is aletheia. In the ancient world, truth was often seen merely as factual accuracy or a philosophical ideal. But the biblical concept of aletheia goes much deeper. It literally means unconcealed. It is the removal of the veil. It is reality as God sees it, stripped of all human pretense, all cultural illusions, and all psychological defense mechanisms. And then there is the word for freedom. Eleutheru. In the Greco-Roman world, liberty, libertas, was a legal status. You were either a slave owned by a master, or you were a free citizen. If you were a free citizen, you had rights, you had autonomy. You could go where you pleased and conduct business as you saw fit. This ancient Roman concept is essentially the grandfather of our modern Western view of freedom. We define freedom horizontally. I am free if no other human being and no government is restricting my choices. But Jesus completely bypasses this political horizontal definition. He ignores the Roman guards. He ignores the political occupation. He cuts straight to the vertical existential reality of the human condition. He replies to their outrage with a statement that shatters their paradigm. Very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Here is the harsh, unvarnished spiritual reality that the modern world desperately tries to ignore. Human nature creates its own chains. We operate under the illusion that absolute autonomy is the highest possible good. We tell ourselves, I am the captain of my soul. I am my own master. We believe that if we can just throw off all external moral constraints, all religious traditions, all societal expectations, and simply follow our own internal desires, we will finally be free. But Jesus exposes the fatal flaw in this logic. When you make yourself your own master, you are handing the throne of your life over to a tyrant. Think about the psychological mirror this holds up to our society today. We have never had more choices. We have never had fewer external restrictions on how we live, what we consume, or who we can be. Yet, look at the landscape of the modern human heart. Are we free? Or are we crushed by anxiety, paralyzed by depression, and bound by invisible addictions? We think we are exercising our freedom when we follow our every desire. But what happens when that desire for a chemical substance becomes a biological necessity? The man taking the drug thinks he is making a free choice until the day he tries to stop and realizes the drug is making the choices for him. But it is not just about substances. What about the unseen addictions? The desperate, clawing need for the approval of others? The endless pursuit of wealth that leaves a person perpetually terrified of losing it? The quiet, simmering anger that dictates how you respond to your family? The pride that prevents you from ever admitting you are wrong? When Jesus says everyone who sins is a slave to sin, he is describing a catastrophic loss of spiritual agency. Sin is not just a violation of a cosmic rulebook. It is an invasive power. It is a force that colonizes the human will. You may think you are freely choosing to hold on to a grudge, but eventually that bitterness becomes your master. It dictates your thoughts, it colors your worldview, and it destroys your peace. You are in bondage. The Pharisees standing in the temple courtyard could not see this. They were so focused on the Roman soldiers outside that they completely missed the tyrant ruling inside their own hearts. They were captives to their pride, their self-righteousness, and their absolute refusal to submit to God on His terms rather than their own. This is why the truth of our own condition is so deeply offensive. It strips away the illusion of our self-mastery. But Jesus did not come merely to diagnose the disease. If you want to dive deeper into uncovering these profound biblical truths and are looking for something that will genuinely help you on your spiritual journey, I have a special resource prepared. To learn more and get access to it, just click the link in the first pinned comment below. He came to provide the cure. And to understand the magnitude of the freedom he is offering, we have to look back at an ancient, beautiful Jewish concept that would have been deeply ingrained in the minds of his listeners. Embedded in the law of Moses in the book of Leviticus is the institution of the year of Jubilee. God commanded that every 50th year in Israel would be a year of total, radical liberation. On the Day of Atonement, a trumpet made from a ram's horn, a shofar, would sound across the entire nation. And when that sound echoed through the valleys and over the hills, something miraculous happened. Every Israelite who had sold himself into slavery to pay off a debt was immediately released. They could walk out of their master's house completely free. Every ancestral piece of land that had been lost to poverty or foreclosure was returned to its original family. Every massive, unpayable debt was wiped clean from the ledgers. It was a divine societal reset button.
A declaration that God's people were not meant to live in perpetual bondage or endless deficit. But the year of Jubilee, as beautiful as it was only a physical shadow. It was a historical rehearsal for a much greater, permanent spiritual reality. The physical release of slaves in ancient Israel was pointing forward to the ultimate release of the human soul from the tyranny of darkness. When Jesus stands in the temple and says, "The truth will set you free," he is essentially blowing the trumpet of the ultimate Jubilee. And this brings us to the greatest secret, the profound theological climax of John chapter 8. How exactly does this truth set us free? For centuries, philosophers have debated what truth actually is. We tend to treat truth as a concept. We think of it as a moral code, a mathematical equation, or a hidden piece of esoteric information. We assume Jesus is saying, if you just learn the right facts, if you adopt the correct philosophical worldview, that intellectual knowledge will liberate your mind. But that is fundamentally incorrect. Later in this exact same gospel, in John chapter 14, Jesus makes a statement that redefines the fabric of reality. He tells his disciples, "I am the way and the truth and the life." He does not say, "I teach the truth." He does not say, "I point to the truth." He says, "I am the truth." The truth that sets you free is not a philosophical concept. It is not a set of religious rules. The truth is a person. This is the paradigm shift that changes everything. True freedom is not the absence of boundaries. It is not the removal of all authority from your life so you can just float in a void of endless choices. True freedom is the presence of the right master. Let me say that again, because it goes against everything our modern culture preaches. Freedom is not found in becoming your own king. Freedom is found in surrendering your crown to the only king who actually loves you. Think about a train. A train might look at the steel tracks it runs on and think, "These tracks are restricting my freedom. I want to go left, I want to go right, I want to tear across the open fields. I want to be free from these rigid iron boundaries." But what happens if the train actually breaks free from the tracks? Does it experience glorious liberty?
No, it derails. It crashes into the dirt, tears itself apart, and completely loses its ability to move forward. Its nature, its very design, requires the tracks to function. The tracks are not a prison. They are the mechanism of its freedom. In the same way, the human soul was not designed for absolute, boundaryless autonomy. We were intricately, beautifully designed by a creator to operate in deep, loving communion with him. When we rebel against that design, when we jump the tracks of God's moral and spiritual order in the name of freedom, we do not become liberated. We derail. We become enslaved to our own brokenness. To know the truth, to deeply, intimately know the person of Jesus Christ, is to be placed back on the tracks you were created for. But how was this ultimate liberation achieved? How did the truth actually break the chains of our invisible prison? This leads us to the profound, heartbreaking irony of the cross. If you trace the narrative of Jesus from this tense debate in the temple courtyard to the end of his earthly life, you witness a staggering reversal. The man who stood and offered absolute freedom to the world is eventually arrested in the dead of night. He, the very embodiment of divine truth, allows his hands to be tied with coarse ropes. He allows himself to be physically bound. He is dragged before corrupt religious courts and cowardly Roman politicians. He is stripped of every single human right, beaten until he is unrecognizable, and then nailed to a piece of rough wood. He has executed the death of a Roman slave. Why? Why would the creator of the universe allow himself to be subjected to the ultimate loss of liberty? Because of the spiritual law of exchange, the chains of our sin, the massive debt of our rebellion, the righteous judgment that our self-centered autonomy demanded. It all had to be dealt with. The prison doors of human nature could not simply be ignored. The ransom had to be paid. Jesus allowed himself to be bound so that you could be unbound. He took the chains of our spiritual slavery upon his own shoulders. He absorbed the full weight, the full penalty, the full tyranny of our sin into his own body on the tree. He experienced the ultimate restriction of death, descending into the dark, suffocating prison of the grave, specifically so he could kick the doors of that prison off their hinges from the inside. When he rose from the dead on the third day, he did not just conquer physical death. He broke the back of the spiritual tyrant that has enslaved humanity since the Garden of Eden. This is why when Jesus offers freedom, it is not an empty political promise. It is a blood-bought reality. He fundamentally redefines what it means to be free. In the modern world, freedom is having the permission to do whatever we want. But in the kingdom of God, freedom is finally receiving the power to be who God created us to be. It is the power to look at a destructive habit, an addiction, a toxic relationship, or a deeply ingrained flaw in your own character and realize that it no longer has the final say. It is the profound relief of taking the heavy, exhausting burden of trying to be your own God and laying it down at the feet of a Savior whose yoke is easy and whose burden is light. When the truth sets you free, you are no longer driven by the frantic need to prove your worth to the world. You are no longer enslaved by the fear of what other people think of you because your identity is anchored in the unconditional love of the Creator. You are no longer terrified of the future because your future is held by the one who conquered time itself. The words carved into the marble of the CIA headquarters and the walls of our universities are beautiful, but they are hollow if they are disconnected from the person who spoke them. Information cannot save your soul. Political systems, no matter how just, cannot liberate a human heart from its own darkness. Only the living Christ can do that. As we reflect on this profound reality, the question shifts from the first-century Pharisees in Jerusalem directly to us, sitting here today. Our lives are a brief, fleeting crossing through time, and every day is a series of eternal choices. We may not have Roman soldiers patrolling our streets, and we may not be physically in chains, but the spiritual reality remains just as urgent. What unseen masters are currently holding the reins of your heart? What secret desires, what hidden fears, what quiet prides have slowly wrapped themselves around your will, convincing you that you are in control while slowly draining the life from your soul? Are you exhausted from the heavy labor of being your own master? The invitation that echoed across the temple courtyard 2,000 years ago is still echoing today. It is an invitation to lay down your defenses. To stop pretending that your lineage, your wealth, your intellect, or your morality makes you free. It is an invitation to step into the light of the unconcealed reality, to meet the truth face to face, and to finally experience the profound, terrifying, beautiful liberation of surrendering to God. Because if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Take a moment to let the weight of that promise settle over you. Consider the trajectory of your own journey. I would love to know where this message is finding you today. In the comments below, tell me where you are watching from. And more importantly, what does true freedom mean to you in this season of your life? What chains are you asking the truth to break today? Let's continue this conversation because the journey toward real liberty is one we are meant to walk together.